Neon City, once a beacon of human innovation and progress, now stood as a grim testament to the totalitarian regime's iron grip. Towering skyscrapers pierced the smog-laden sky, their sleek metallic facades reflecting the cold, unyielding power of the central authority. The streets, once teeming with life and energy, were now patrolled by the regime's enforcers, their black uniforms and emotionless visors, a chilling reminder of the omnipresent surveillance and control. Amidst this dystopian landscape, a young woman named Anya navigated the crowded marketplace, her footsteps quick and purposeful. Her worn-out jacket and faded jeans marked her as a citizen of the lower sectors, a stark contrast to the pristine uniforms of the enforcers who patrolled the area. Anya's eyes, however, held a spark of defiance that contradicted her unassuming appearance. She served as a courier, a crucial link in the underground network of resistance that thrived beneath the facade of Neon City. Her job was to deliver messages, data chips, and other contraband that the regime deemed subversive. It was a dangerous game, one played in the shadows, where a single misstep could lead to imprisonment or worse. Today's delivery was particularly sensitive. A data chip containing evidence of the regime's atrocities, their brutal suppression of dissent, and their exploitation of the populace. Anya clutched the chip tightly in her pocket, its weight a heavy burden on her conscience. As she navigated the bustling marketplace, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The enforcers' presence was a constant reminder of the regime's reach, their surveillance cameras and drones tracking every movement, every whispered conversation. Her instincts proved correct. A group of enforcers, their black uniforms a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of the marketplace, blocked her path. Their leader, a hulking figure with a cruel sneer etched on his face, stepped forward. "Citizen Anya Petrova," he said, his voice amplified by a vocoder. "You are suspected of engaging in subversive activities. Come with us." Anya's heart pounded in her chest, but she maintained her composure. "I'm just a courier," she said, her voice steady. "I'm delivering a package." The enforcer's sneer widened. "We know what you're delivering, citizen, and it's not welcome in Neon City." He gestured to his men, and they moved to apprehend her. Anya's instincts kicked in, her body reacting with a speed and agility that surprised even herself. She dodged their grasp, weaving through the crowd, her movements fluid and precise. The enforcers gave chase, their heavy boots pounding the pavement, their voices barking orders through the vocoders. Anya's heart raced, her lungs burning as she sprinted through the maze of stalls and alleyways. She reached a dead end, a towering wall of concrete blocking her escape. The enforcers closed in, their faces grim, their weapons drawn. Anya's breath hitched, her mind racing for a solution. She was trapped, cornered, with no apparent way out. But then, a flicker of defiance ignited in her eyes. She would not surrender, not without a fight. She turned to face her pursuers, her stance resolute, her fists clenched. "You won't take me without a fight," she declared, her voice echoing through the alleyway. The enforcers laughed, their amusement cruel and mocking. "A fight? You, a lowly courier, against us?" Their leader stepped forward, his baton crackling with energy. "You're delusional, citizen. Surrender now, and we might show you some mercy." Anya's lips curled into a defiant smile. "Mercy? From you? I'd rather die fighting." And with a primal scream, she charged. The enforcers, caught off guard by Anya's sudden aggression, stumbled back, their formation momentarily disrupted. Anya's attack was a whirlwind of fists and feet, her movements fueled by a desperate fury that surprised even herself. Years of oppression, of witnessing the regime's brutality, had ignited a fire within her, a primal rage that demanded release. She struck the lead enforcer with a fierce kick, sending him sprawling to the ground. Another enforcer lunged at her, his baton raised, but Anya ducked under his swing, her lithe body twisting and turning with an agility that belied her slender frame. The marketplace erupted into chaos, the crowd scattering as the enforcers struggled to contain Anya's onslaught. Vendors overturned their stalls, shoppers screamed, and children clung to their parents in fear. Anya's every move was a calculated strike, her years of training in the Resistance's underground gyms honing her into a weapon. She disarmed one enforcer, using his own baton against him, then dodged another's energy blast, the searing heat singeing her hair. The lead enforcer, recovering from his initial shock, roared in anger. "Subdue her," he ordered, his voice distorted by the vocoder. "Use whatever force necessary." The enforcers redoubled their efforts, their batons crackling with energy, their movements becoming more brutal. But Anya refused to yield. She fought with a ferocity that bordered on the supernatural, her every blow fueled by a righteous anger that seemed to emanate from the very depths of her soul. The crowd, initially paralyzed by fear, began to stir. They witnessed Anya's defiance, her refusal to bow to the regime's enforcers. A murmur rippled through the marketplace, a collective gasp of astonishment and admiration. And then, a single voice rose above the din. "Fight back," a man shouted, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Don't let them take her." The words ignited a spark, a flame of rebellion that spread through the crowd like wildfire. People surged forward, their anger and frustration boiling over. They threw rocks, overturned carts, and hurled insults at the enforcers. The enforcers, overwhelmed by the sudden uprising, struggled to maintain control. Their batons lashed out, their energy blast arced through the air, but the crowd's fury was relentless. Anya, heartened by the unexpected support, fought with renewed vigor. She saw the faces of her fellow citizens, their eyes burning with a shared defiance, their spirits ignited by her own act of rebellion. And in that moment, she knew that she was not alone. The spark of defiance had ignited a flame that would spread throughout Neon City, the darkness of the regime's oppression. The uprising had begun. The marketplace transformed into a chaotic battleground. The air crackled with the raw energy of defiance, a palpable force that seemed to emanate from the very stones beneath their feet. The once familiar scents of spices and freshly baked bread were now mingled with the acrid tang of fear and the metallic sting of spilled blood. Anya, her movements a blur of calculated aggression, danced through the chaos, her every strike a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The enforcers, their once imposing presence now faltering, struggled to contain the onslaught of a woman they had underestimated. But it was more than just Anya's physical prowess that fueled the uprising. It was the collective will of the oppressed, a symphony of defiance that resonated through the marketplace. The citizens of Neon City, their spirits long suppressed by the regime's iron fist, now found their voices, their actions echoing Anya's unwavering resolve. A young mother, her eyes blazing with a protective fury, shielded her child from an enforcer's baton, her defiance a primal roar that echoed through the crowd. An elderly man, his frail body trembling with righteous anger, hurled a cobblestone at an enforcer's visor, his defiance a testament to the enduring human spirit. The enforcers, their training and discipline faltering in the face of such raw emotion, began to retreat, their once orderly ranks dissolving into a disorganized scramble. The tide had turned, the balance of power shifting in favor of the oppressed. Anya, watching the unfolding chaos from a nearby rooftop, felt a surge of exhilaration. She had witnessed countless acts of resistance, but none as potent, as visceral, as this spontaneous eruption of defiance. Her own heart echoed the rhythm of the uprising, her spirit resonating with the collective will of the people. She felt a connection to something ancient and profound, a primal energy that transcended the boundaries of the individual, a force that bound them together in a shared struggle for freedom. It was a force that the regime had underestimated, a power they had sought to suppress but could not extinguish. It was the indomitable human spirit, the unyielding will to survive, to thrive, to be free. And it was about to change the course of history. As the enforcers retreated, their morale shattered, a wave of jubilation swept through the marketplace. The citizens of Neon City, their faces alight with a newfound hope, cheered and embraced, their voices a chorus of triumph. But Anya knew that this was just the beginning. The regime would not stand idly by while its authority was challenged. They would retaliate, their response swift and brutal. The true test of their resolve was yet to come. The spark of defiance had ignited a flame, but it was up to them to keep it burning, to fan it into a conflagration that would consume the regime's oppression and the path to a new dawn. Alia's gaze turned towards the towering skyscrapers that dominated the skyline, their cold metallic facades a stark reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. But in the faces of the people, in their shared defiance, she saw a glimmer of hope, a promise of a future where humanity would once again be free. And she knew, with a certainty that transcended words, that they would not fail. News of the marketplace uprising spread like wildfire, carried on whispered breaths and clandestine transmissions. The regime's iron grip, once seemingly unbreakable, now trembled with the seismic shift of a populace awakening to its own power. In the dimly lit backrooms of clandestine gatherings, hushed conversations turned to open declarations of resistance. The faces of the oppressed, once etched with fear and resignation, now burned with a newfound determination. The regime's propaganda, its carefully constructed facade of order and prosperity, crumbled under the weight of a collective truth. Anya found herself at the epicenter of this burgeoning movement. Her once solitary acts of resistance now resonated with thousands, her courage inspiring others to shed their shackles of fear. But with newfound recognition came increased scrutiny. The regime's enforcers, their pride wounded by the marketplace incident, intensified their search for Anya, their surveillance network casting a wider, more insidious net. Alia, ever vigilant, monitored the regime's movements from the shadows. She knew that Anya's safety was paramount, not just for the resistance, but for the hope she represented. "We need to get her out of the city," Alia said, her voice urgent as she addressed a group of resistance leaders gathered in a hidden bunker beneath the city's underbelly. The room, dim by the flickering light of a makeshift generator, was filled with a tense silence. The faces around the table, etched with the lines of hardship and struggle, reflected the gravity of the situation. "It's too dangerous," one of the leaders, a grizzled veteran named Marcus, objected. "The enforcers have sealed off the city. There's no way out." Alia shook her head, her eyes blazing with determination. "There's always a way. We just need to find it." She outlined her plan, a daring escape route that would utilize the city's forgotten infrastructure, the abandoned tunnels and maintenance shafts that crisscrossed beneath the gleaming towers. The plan was met with a mix of skepticism and cautious optimism. It was a gamble, a desperate bid for freedom against overwhelming odds. But the alternative was unthinkable. "We have to try," Emily said, her voice firm. "We can't let them silence Anya. She's a beacon of hope, a symbol of our resistance." The others nodded, their resolve solidifying. Anya's courage had ignited a flame within them, a flame they would not allow to be extinguished. As they finalized the escape plan, a sense of purpose filled the room. They were not just fighting for Anya's freedom. They were fighting for the future of humanity, for the right to live without fear, to dream without constraints. The regime's oppression had pushed them to the brink, but it had also awakened something within them, a primal strength, a collective will that refused to be broken. *** Neon City. The undercity of Neon City was different from the gleaming towers and neon-lit streets above. It was a labyrinth of forgotten tunnels and abandoned maintenance shafts, a subterranean world where the dispossessed and the defiant sought refuge from the regime's oppressive gaze. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and stale machinery, whispered tales of a city's hidden underbelly, a place where hope flickered like a dying ember in the encroaching darkness. Anya, guided by a network of resistance operatives, moved through the shadows, her footsteps light and silent. Each step was a calculated risk, a dance with the unseen, as the regime's surveillance network cast its insidious web throughout the city. The weight of the data chip, a testament to the regime's atrocities, pressed heavily against her chest, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. The enforcers were relentless in their pursuit, their drones and surveillance systems scouring the city for any trace of her. But Anya, with her intimate knowledge of the Undercity's hidden pathways, was a phantom, a whisper in the wind, always one step ahead of her pursuers. Each narrow escape, each close call, fueled her determination, hardening her resolve into an unbreakable steel. She moved from safe house to safe house, her presence a fleeting shadow in the darkness. Each encounter with her fellow resistors was a bittersweet symphony of hope and despair. Their faces, etched with the lines of hardship and struggle, spoke volumes of the sacrifices they had made, the loved ones they had lost, all in the name of a freedom that seemed increasingly distant. Anya, coordinating the escape plan from a hidden command center, monitored Anya's progress with a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. Anya had become more than just a courier. She was a symbol, a beacon of defiance that dispelled the darkness of their oppression. But Anya also knew the brutal reality. Anya was a target, a prize that the regime would stop at nothing to capture. "She's getting closer to the extraction point," Anya reported to Emily and the other resistance leaders, her voice a strained whisper. "But the enforcers are closing in, their net tightening with every passing moment." The holographic map before them painted a grim picture. Anya's position, a lone beacon of hope, was surrounded by a sea of red triangles, each one representing an enforcer, their relentless pursuit a testament to the regime's desperation to crush the burgeoning rebellion. Emily's expression hardened, her resolve mirroring the cold steel of her gaze. "We need to create a diversion," she declared, her voice unwavering. "Something to draw their attention away from Anya, to buy her time." The resistance leaders exchanged glances, their faces etched with the weight of responsibility. They were outmatched and outgunned, their resources stretched to the breaking point. But the thought of abandoning Anya, of allowing the regime to snuff out the flame of hope she represented, was unbearable. Marcus, the grizzled veteran, his eyes haunted by the ghosts of battles past, spoke up. "We'll stage a series of coordinated attacks on enforcer patrols throughout the city," he proposed, his voice rough but steady. "Small, targeted strikes that will force them to spread their forces thin, creating a window for Anya's escape." Anya nodded, a flicker of admiration in her eyes for the old soldier's tactical mind. "It's a risky gambit, but it might just work. We need to hit them hard, fast, and unexpectedly. We need to make them fear us." The plan was set in motion, the resistance operatives dispersing into the undercity like shadows in the night. Each one carried the weight of the mission, the hope of a city, on their shoulders. Anya, oblivious to the unfolding events above, continued her journey towards the extraction point. Her heart hammered in her chest, each beat a symphony of fear and defiance. The oppressive silence of the undercity, broken only by the distant rumble of the city above and the echo of her own footsteps, amplified her sense of isolation. A shiver ran down her spine, a cold whisper of unease. She paused, her senses straining, her hand instinctively reaching for the hidden weapon strapped to her ankle. But there was nothing there, only the oppressive darkness and the gnawing feeling that she was not alone. She shook her head, dismissing the sensation as a trick of her frayed nerves. The regime's constant surveillance had taken its toll, leaving her hyper-vigilant, her mind playing tricks on her. Anya pressed onward, the oppressive silence of the tunnels amplifying the relentless pounding of her heart. Each echoing footfall seemed to reverberate not just through the physical space, but through the corridors of her own soul. The weight of the data chip, nestled securely against her chest, was a physical manifestation of the burden she carried, the hopes and dreams of a city yearning for liberation. She was more than just a courier now. She was a symbol, a spark that had ignited a flame of defiance. The thought both exhilarated and terrified her. The admiration in the eyes of her fellow resistors, the whispered gratitude, the silent nods of solidarity, they fueled her determination. But they also intensified the crushing weight of responsibility. What if I fail? The question haunted her, a specter lurking in the shadows of her mind. What if I'm caught? What if the regime crushes this fledgling rebellion before it even takes flight? The fear was a constant companion, a cold hand gripping her heart. But beneath the fear, there was also a simmering anger, a righteous fury at the regime's oppression, at the injustice that permeated every aspect of their lives. They took everything from us, she thought, her jaw clenching. underscore our freedom, our dignity, our very humanity. They turned Neon City into a gilded cage, a prison of their own making. The thought of her parents, their faces etched with the lines of hardship and resignation, fueled her resolve. They had taught her the true meaning of resilience, the importance of never giving up, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Underscore I won't let them win, she vowed, her voice a silent echo in the tunnels. Underscore I won't let them break our spirit. She reached a junction, the tunnel branching off in two directions. A moment of hesitation, a flicker of doubt, threatened to derail her. But then, she remembered the faces in the marketplace, the eyes that had blazed with defiance, the voices that had roared for freedom. Underscore, this is bigger than me, she realized. It's about all of us, about the future we deserve. She chose a path, her footsteps echoing her unwavering resolve. The extraction point was close now, the promise of escape a tantalizing whisper in the darkness. But the feeling of being watched persisted, a chilling sensation that crawled beneath her skin. She paused again, her senses heightened, her every nerve on edge. The silence was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic drip of water from a leaky pipe. And then she heard it. A faint clicking sound, like the skittering of an insect's legs on metal. It came from behind her, from the darkness she had just left. She spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. But the tunnel was empty, the shadows concealing any potential threat. It's just my imagination, she told herself, her voice a strained whisper. It's the stress, the fear. But the feeling of unease lingered, a cold knot in her stomach. She quickened her pace, the extraction point now a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. As she moved through the tunnels, a question echoed in her mind. Underscore what is freedom? She pondered. Underscore is it simply the absence of oppression, or is it something more? Is it the right to choose one's own path, to live without fear, to dream without constraints? The questions swirled within her, their answers elusive, their implications profound. She had always yearned for freedom, but now, on the cusp of escape, she realized that true liberation was not just about breaking free from the regime's grasp. It was about reclaiming their humanity, their dignity, their right to self-determination. The weight of that realization settled upon her, a heavy burden that threatened to crush her spirit. But then, she remembered the faces in the marketplace, the collective defiance that had ignited a flame of hope. Commander Dragon's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the holographic display, the city's grid pulsating with the chaotic rhythm of defiance. Each red flare, marking a skirmish with the resistance, was a thorn in his side, a challenge to the order he had sworn to uphold. "They're getting bolder," he growled, his voice a low rumble that echoed the growing storm within him. "They are testing us, probing for weakness like predators in the night." Captain Eva, his second in command, stood ramrod straight, her cold, calculating gaze mirroring the steely resolve in the room. "Their tactics are evolving, Commander. They're utilizing our own surveillance against us, turning our strengths into vulnerabilities." Dragon slammed his fist onto the console, the vibration rippling through the room like a tremor of repressed fury. "Find them. I want every resister rounded up and brought to justice. Make an example of them. Show the citizens of Neon City the price of rebellion." A cruel smile twisted Eva's lips. "As you command, Commander. We will remind them that defiance is a disease, and we are the cure." Her voice, amplified through the speakers, sent a chill down the spines of the assembled enforcers. "This is a citywide manhunt," she declared, her words sharp as a blade. "I want every available unit deployed. Search every corner, every alleyway, every shadow. Leave no stone unturned. We will crush this rebellion, and we will make them pay for their defiance." The enforcers, their faces masked by emotionless visors, responded with a chorus of affirmative clicks and whirs. They marched out of the command center, an ominous tide of black uniforms sweeping through the city's neon-lit arteries. Dragon watched them go, his expression a mask of grim determination. He had dedicated his life to the central authority, his loyalty forged in the fires of a brutal past. He had seen the chaos that preceded the regime's rise, the anarchy that threatened to consume their world. He believed in order, in control, in the iron fist that maintained the illusion of peace. But as he gazed out at the city, a flicker of doubt gnawed at his resolve. The defiance he saw in the eyes of the citizens, the coordinated attacks on his patrols, the elusive Anya Petrova, they all hinted at a deeper truth. The regime's grip was slipping, its promises of prosperity a hollow echo in the hearts of the oppressed. He thought of his own daughter, Lena, her youthful idealism clashing with the harsh realities of their world. He had tried to shield her, to instill in her the values of obedience and loyalty. But he saw the questions in her eyes, the silent rebellion brewing beneath her compliant facade. Was he fighting for a future that even his own daughter questioned? Was the price of the order too high, or the cost of control too steep? These questions gnawed at him. He had always believed in the regime's power and its ability to quell dissent and maintain stability. But now he faced an enemy he couldn't fully comprehend, a force that transcended the physical realm. It was the indomitable human spirit, a force as unpredictable as it was powerful, and it was a force that, even in the heart of the regime's stronghold, was beginning to stir. Neon City, Sector 7, Apartment 403, The cramped apartment was shrouded in a dim, bluish twilight, the only source of light emanating from the flickering holo screen embedded in the wall. Lena Dragon, her once vibrant features now etched with a weary resignation, sat huddled on a threadbare couch, her eyes glued to the screen. The newsfeed, a relentless stream of propaganda and fear-mongering, blared the regime's latest pronouncements. Images of the marketplace uprising, carefully edited to portray the resistors as violent criminals, flashed across the screen, accompanied by a stern voiceover condemning their actions. Lena's stomach churned with a mixture of anger and disgust. She knew the truth, had witnessed firsthand the brutality of the enforcers, their indiscriminate use of force against unarmed civilians. The regime's lies, their attempts to paint the resistors as the villains, only served to fuel her growing resentment. Her gaze drifted to the framed photograph on the wall, a relic of a happier time. It showed her as a young girl, beaming with joy, her father, Commander Dragon, standing proudly beside her. His uniform, then crisp and new, now bore the weight of countless battles fought in the name of the Central Authority. Lena's heart ached with a conflicting mix of love and disillusionment. She had always idolized her father, his unwavering dedication to order and stability a source of comfort in a chaotic world. But as she grew older, the cracks in the regime's facade became impossible to ignore. The poverty, the inequality, the suppression of dissent, they all painted a picture of a society built on fear, not prosperity. Her father's role in upholding this system, his unquestioning loyalty to the Central Authority, now filled her with a sense of betrayal. She had tried to reason with him, to appeal to his sense of compassion, but his resolve remained unyielding. He's blinded by his duty, she thought, her voice a bitter echo in the empty apartment. He can't see the truth, the suffering he's perpetuating. A knock on the door startled her, her heart leaping into her throat. She glanced at the screen, the newsfeed now replaced by a live view of the corridor outside her apartment. 2 enforcers stood at her door, their black uniforms and emotionless visors a chilling reminder of the regime's reach. Lena's breath hitched, her mind racing. Had they discovered her connection to the resistance? Were they here to arrest her? She rose from the couch, her movements hesitant, her palms clammy with sweat. She approached the door, her voice a strained whisper. "Who is it?" "Central Authority. Open up," a vocoded voice barked from the other side. Lena's heart hammered in her chest. She knew she had no choice but to comply. With trembling hands, she unlocked the door, the hinges creaking in protest. The enforcers stepped into the apartment, their presence filling the cramped space with an oppressive weight. Lena's gaze darted between them, her mind searching for a way out, a way to protect herself, her secrets. But there was no escape. The enforcers had her cornered, their eyes, hidden behind the visors, piercing through her facade of composure. Lena Dragon, the lead enforcer said, his voice devoid of emotion. You are under arrest for suspicion of aiding and abetting subversive activities. The words hung in the air, a death knell to her hopes and dreams. Lena's world crumbled around her, the walls of her apartment closing in, the familiar scent of home now tainted with the bitter taste of betrayal. As the enforcers moved to apprehend her, a single thought echoed in her mind, a desperate plea for a miracle. _Father, please, help me. _Neon City. Sector 7, Apartment 403, _. The enforcers moved with practiced efficiency, their black-gloved hands closing around Lena's wrists, the cold metal of their restraints a stark contrast to the warmth of her skin. She struggled, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and defiance, but their grip was unyielding. You have the right to remain silent, the lead enforcer intoned, his voice a monotone drone. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Lena's eyes darted around the room, searching for a way out, a glimmer of hope. But the enforcers had sealed off her apartment, their presence a suffocating reminder of the regime's absolute control. As they led her out into the corridor, her gaze fell upon the holo screen, still flickering with the propaganda-laden news feed. The image of Anya, her face defiant, her spirit unbroken, flashed across the screen, a stark juxtaposition to Lena's own predicament. A wave of guilt washed over her. Anya, a stranger, a courier, had risked her life for the resistance, for the ideals that Lena herself had only dared to whisper in the privacy of her own thoughts. And now, Anya was out there, alone, hunted by the regime, while Lena, the daughter of a high-ranking commander, was being led away in chains. The irony was not lost on her. The regime she had once believed in, the system her father had dedicated his life to uphold, was now the very force that threatened to crush her. As they descended in the enforcer transport, the city's underbelly unfolded before her eyes. The gleaming towers and neon lights gave way to a grim landscape of decaying infrastructure and forgotten dreams. It was a world Lena had only glimpsed from the safety of her privileged existence, a world where the true cost of the regime's oppression was laid bare. The transport docked at the enforcer headquarters, a monolithic structure that loomed over the city like a predatory beast. Lena was led through a maze of sterile corridors, her footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The air hummed with the energy of surveillance systems, the invisible eyes of the regime tracking her every move. She was brought to an interrogation room, its cold, metallic walls reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. A single chair sat in the center of the room, its restraints gleaming ominously. The enforcers secured her to the chair, their movements efficient and impersonal. Lena's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had never felt so alone, so vulnerable. The door slid open, and a figure stepped into the room. Lena's eyes widened in disbelief. It was her father, Commander Dragon, his face etched with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Lena," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "What have you done?" Lena's defiance crumbled, replaced by a wave of shame and regret. She had betrayed her father, her family, the very ideals she had been raised to uphold. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at her father, the man she had once idolized, now a stranger, a symbol of the regime she had come to despise. "I'm sorry, Father," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to." Dragon's expression softened, a flicker of compassion crossing his features. He knelt before her, his hand reaching out to gently touch her cheek. "I know, my child," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But your actions have consequences. You have put yourself, and our family, in grave danger." Lena closed her eyes, the tears streaming down her face. She had made her choice, embraced the path of defiance. And now she would face the consequences, whatever they may be. But even in her despair, a glimmer of hope remained. The spark of rebellion, once ignited, could not be extinguished. It would continue to burn, fueled by the collective will of the oppressed, until it consumed the regime's tyranny and the path to a new dawn. And Lena, the daughter of a commander, the symbol of a broken system, would be there to witness it. Neon City. Enforcer Headquarters, Interrogation Room. The harsh fluorescent lights cast long, unforgiving shadows across the interrogation room, amplifying the chilling silence that hung in the air. Lena, her wrist bound by cold metal restraints, sat facing her father, their gazes locked in a silent battle of wills. Commander Dragon's face, usually a mask of stoic authority, was now etched with conflicting emotions. His eyes, once filled with pride and unwavering resolve, now held a flicker of vulnerability, a hint of the internal struggle that raged within him. "Lena," he began, his voice a hoarse whisper, why did you choose this path?" Lena's gaze remained defiant, her chin held high. "Because it's the right path, Father. The regime is corrupt, its power built on lies and oppression. I couldn't stand by and watch anymore." Dragon's jaw tightened, his anger momentarily eclipsing his sorrow. "You're naive, child. The central authority brings order, stability. Without it, chaos would reign." Lena shook her head, her voice filled with a quiet conviction. "That's what they want you to believe, Father. But it's a lie. The order they impose is a prison. The stability they offer is a mirage. The people are suffering, their voices silenced, their dreams crushed." Dragon's eyes narrowed, his resolve hardening. "You've been listening to the resistors, their poisonous whispers. They're nothing but criminals, anarchists who seek to destroy everything we've built." Lena's defiance flared. "They're not criminal, Father. They're freedom fighters, patriots who are willing to risk their lives for a better future." Her words struck a chord within Dragon, a flicker of doubt momentarily clouding his judgment. He had seen the brutality of the regime, the ruthless suppression of dissent. But he had always justified it as a necessary evil, a means to an end. Now, his own daughter was challenging that belief, forcing him to confront the uncomfortable truth that the regime he served might not be the benevolent force he had always believed it to be. "Lena," he said, his voice softening, "you don't understand the complexities of governing a society. There are sacrifices that must be made, difficult choices that must be faced." Lena's eyes blazed with a righteous fury. "Sacrifices? Choices? Is that what you call the lives that have been lost? The families torn apart? The dreams shattered? Is that the price of your precious order?" Her words pierced Dragon's heart, each syllable a painful reminder of the sacrifices he had made, the compromises he had accepted in the name of duty. He had always believed that he was serving the greater good, but now, confronted with his daughter's accusations, he was forced to question the very foundations of his beliefs. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken truths and conflicting emotions. Father and daughter, once united by a bond of love and loyalty, now stood on opposite sides of a growing divide, their paths diverging in the face of a brewing revolution. Dragon's resolve wavered, his heart torn between his duty to the regime and his love for his daughter. He knew that he had to make a choice that would define not only his future, but the future of his family, and perhaps even the fate of Neon City itself. In a dimly lit room, bathed in the cold glow of countless monitors, an unseen observer watched the unfolding drama with a detached curiosity. Rows upon rows of screens displayed live feeds from across the city, each one a window into the lives of its inhabitants. The observer, a shadowy figure shrouded in anonymity, had access to the regime's most sensitive surveillance data, a panopticon view of Neon City's every heartbeat. They had witnessed the marketplace uprising, the spark of defiance that had ignited a flame of rebellion. They had tracked Anya's movements through the Undercity, her desperate flight from the regime's enforcers, and they had observed the interrogation of Lena Dragon, the daughter of a high-ranking commander, her defiance a stark contrast to her father's unwavering loyalty. The observers' motives remained shrouded in mystery, their intentions a cipher yet to be deciphered. But their presence, their silent observation, hinted at a deeper game at play, a hidden agenda that transcended the immediate conflict between the regime and the resistance. They watched as Commander Dragon struggled with his daughter's accusations, his once unshakable faith in the central authority now wavering. They saw the conflict in his eyes, the battle between duty and love, between loyalty and conscience. A subtle smile played on the observer's lips, a flicker of amusement in the face of human frailty. They had anticipated this, foreseen the cracks that would appear in the regime's facade. The seeds of doubt had been planted long ago, carefully nurtured, waiting for the right moment to bloom. The observer's fingers danced across the console, accessing Lena's personal files, her history, her connections. They delved into her digital footprint, tracing her online activity, her interactions with known resistance sympathizers. The evidence was damning, enough to condemn her to a life of imprisonment, or worse. But the observer hesitated, their finger hovering over the submit button. There was something about Lena, a spark of defiance that mirrored Anya's own. It was a quality the observer admired, a trait they recognized in themselves. They had always been an outsider, a silent observer in the shadows, watching the world unfold from a distance. They had seen the rise and fall of empires, the ebb and flow of power, the endless cycle of conflict and resolution. But they had never intervened, never taken sides, content to remain a neutral observer. Until now, the events in Neon City had stirred something within them, a sense of purpose, a desire to influence the course of events. They saw the potential for change, the possibility of a new dawn for humanity. And they knew, with a certainty that transcended logic, that they had a role to play in this unfolding drama. The observer's finger pressed the delete button, erasing Lena's file from the system. A small act of defiance, a subtle shift in the balance of power. It was a beginning, a whisper in the wind, a ripple in the cosmic fabric. And it was enough. The interrogation room was a stark, unforgiving space. Cold, metallic walls reflected the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, casting long, ominous shadows that danced with Lena's every nervous twitch. The air hung heavy with the sterile scent of disinfectant, a stark contrast to the comforting aroma of her mother's cooking that still clung to her worn jacket. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the silent accusations in her father's eyes. Commander Dragon, a man she had once idolized, now sat across from her, his face a battleground of conflicting emotions. The lines etched deep into his brow spoke of countless sleepless nights, the weight of leadership pressing down on him with unrelenting force. "Lena," his voice rasped, a tremor betraying the turmoil within. "Why? Why did you choose this path?" Lena's gaze held his, a flicker of defiance sparking in her emerald eyes. "Because it's the right path, Father. The regime is corrupt, its power built on a foundation of lies and oppression. I couldn't stand by and watch anymore." Dragon's jaw tightened, his anger momentarily eclipsing his sorrow. "You're naive, child. The central authority brings order, stability. Without it, chaos would reign." Lena shook her head, her voice trembling but resolute. "That's the illusion they've woven, Father. The order they impose is a prison, the stability they offer is a mirage. The people are suffering, their voices silenced, their dreams crushed beneath the regime's iron heel." Dragon's eyes narrowed, his resolve momentarily faltering. He had witnessed the brutality, the ruthless suppression of dissent, but had always justified it as a necessary evil, a sacrifice for the greater good. Now, his own daughter's words pierced through the carefully constructed armor of his beliefs. "You've been listening to the resistors," he accused, his voice laced with bitterness. "Their poisonous whispers have clouded your judgment. They're nothing but criminals, anarchists who seek to destroy everything we've built." Lena's defiance flared, her voice rising above the subtle hum of the surveillance equipment hidden within the walls. "They're not criminals, Father. They're freedom fighters, patriots who are willing to risk their lives for a better future. A future where humanity isn't shackled by fear and control." Her words hung in the air, a challenge to the very core of his being. Dragon's resolve wavered, his heart torn between his duty and his love for his daughter. He remembered a time, long ago, when he too had dreamed of a better world. But the scars of the past, the chaos that had preceded the regime's rise, had hardened his heart, convinced him that control was the only path to peace. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken truths, and the weight of a lifetime of choices. Lena watched her father, her heart aching with a mix of love and disappointment. She had hoped to awaken his conscience, to rekindle the spark of idealism she knew still flickered within him. Suddenly, the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, shattering the tense standoff. Captain Eva, her presence a chilling reminder of the regime's unyielding power, strode into the room. "Commander Dragon," she reported, her voice clipped and formal. "We have a situation." Dragon's shoulders straightened, his paternal vulnerability replaced by the mask of authority. "What is it, Captain?" Eva's gaze flickered towards Lena, a subtle sneer curling her lips. "We've detected a security breach in the surveillance system. Someone has accessed and deleted classified files." Dragon's brow furrowed, a wave of unease washing over him. "Classified files? What kind of files?" Eva hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "The files pertaining to Anya Petrova, Commander. They've been erased." A stunned silence filled the room, broken only by the soft whirring of the ventilation system. Lena's heart pounded in her chest, a surge of hope battling against the cold grip of fear. Someone, somewhere within the regime's ironclad structure, had defied orders, risked their own safety to protect her. Dragon's face hardened, his eyes narrowing into slits. "Find out who did this," he ordered, his voice a steely blade cutting through the tension. "I want them brought before me immediately." Eva nodded, a predatory gleam in her eyes. "Consider it done, Commander." As she turned to leave, her gaze lingered on Lena, a silent threat hanging in the air. Lena met her stare with a defiant glare, her fear momentarily eclipsed by a newfound sense of empowerment. She was not alone. There were others, even within the heart of the regime, who dared to challenge the status quo. The unseen ally, whoever they were, had given her a second chance, a chance to continue the fight, to reclaim her freedom and her future. The heart of the regime's surveillance network pulsed with a rhythmic hum, a symphony of data streams and digital whispers that painted a portrait of a city under siege, rows upon rows of servers, their blinking lights casting an eerie glow on the sterile white walls, processed the endless stream of information collected by the regime's omnipresent eyes. In the shadows of this digital panopticon, a lone figure moved with the stealth of a phantom. Their form, clad in a nondescript technician's uniform, blended seamlessly with the maze of cables and consoles. But their eyes, hidden behind a pair of mirrored goggles, betrayed a depth of intelligence and a flicker of rebellion that set them apart from the countless cogs in the regime's machine. The figure's fingers danced across a keyboard, their movements a blur of precision and purpose. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, a digital ballet of commands and counter-commands that wove a tapestry of deception and defiance. They were the unseen ally, the ghost in the machine, the one who had dared to challenge the central authority's absolute control. Their motives remained shrouded in mystery, their identity a carefully guarded secret. But their actions, their subtle manipulations of the regime's own systems, spoke volumes. They had witnessed the marketplace uprising, the spark of defiance that had ignited a flame of rebellion. They had watched Anya Petrova's desperate flight through the Undercity, her courage and resilience a beacon of hope in a world of oppression. And they had seen Lena Dragon, the daughter of a high-ranking commander, her spirit unbroken even in the face of the regime's interrogation. The unseen ally felt a kinship with these rebels, a connection that transcended the boundaries of their digital existence. They too had once believed in the regime's promises of order and stability, their dedication to the central authority unwavering. But as they delved deeper into the regime's inner workings, they had glimpsed the rot beneath the surface, the corruption that festered at the heart of the system. They had witnessed the abuse of power, the suppression of dissent, the manipulation of truth. And they had made a choice. They would no longer be a silent observer, a passive participant in the regime's tyranny. They would use their skills, their knowledge, their access to the very heart of the system to fight back. They would become a whisper in the machine, a digital ghost that haunted the regime's nightmares. Their fingers paused on the keyboard, a single line of code glowing on the screen. It was a command, a subtle alteration to the surveillance algorithms, a whisper that would ripple through the system, sowing the seeds of doubt and confusion. The unseen ally smiled, a flicker of satisfaction in their eyes. They had taken the first step, a small but significant act of defiance. The neon lights of Sector 4 flickered and buzzed, casting an erratic dance of shadows across the rain-slicked streets. A squad of enforcers, their black uniforms gleaming under the artificial glow, marched in rigid formation, their boots striking the pavement with a synchronized rhythm that echoed the regime's ironclad discipline. Sergeant Viktor, a veteran of countless patrols, led the squad, his gaze scanning the dimly lit alleyways and crowded thoroughfares. The city's usual hum of activity was muted tonight, replaced by an undercurrent of tension, a palpable unease that hung heavy in the air. The recent uprising in the marketplace, the daring escape of Anya Petrova, and the ongoing manhunt had cast a pall over Neon City. The citizens, once docile and compliant, now eyed the enforcers with a mixture of fear and resentment. The whispers of rebellion, once confined to the shadows, now echoed through the streets, carried on the wind and the rain. Viktor's grip tightened on his baton, its energy core thrumming with a barely contained power. He had always believed in the Central Authority's mission, its unwavering commitment to order and stability. But the recent events had shaken his faith, sown seeds of doubt in the fertile ground of his conscience. He had seen the brutality of the crackdown, the indiscriminate use of force against unarmed civilians. He had witnessed the fear in the eyes of the innocent, the despair of those caught in the regime's iron grip. And he had begun to question. The comms unit crackled, interrupting his thoughts. Sector 4 Patrol, this is HQ. We have a disturbance reported in Block C. Proceed with caution. Viktor nodded, his jaw clenching. Another disturbance, another test of their resolve. He signaled to his squad, their formation tightening as they moved towards Block C. As they approached the designated area, the tension in the air grew palpable. The once bustling streets were now deserted, the only sound the rhythmic drumming of the rain against the concrete. The shadows seemed to deepen, the neon lights casting an eerie glow that distorted reality, blurring the lines between the physical and the ethereal. Viktor's senses sharpened, his instincts honed by years of service. He could feel the presence of something unseen, a lurking danger that sent shivers down his spine. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a deafening explosion. A nearby building, its facade adorned with the regime's propaganda posters, erupted in a fiery inferno. Smoke and debris billowed into the sky, the acrid smell of burning metal stinging their nostrils. The enforcers scrambled for cover, their weapons raised, their visors scanning the surrounding buildings for the source of the attack. But there was no sign of the perpetrators, only the lingering echoes of the blast and the growing sense of unease. Viktor's comms unit crackled again, this time with a series of frantic reports. Similar attacks were occurring throughout the city, coordinated strikes on enforcer patrols and regime installations. The resistance was rising, its actions bolder, its tactics more sophisticated. The unseen ally, the ghost in the machine, had sown the seeds of chaos, and now the city was reaping the whirlwind. Viktor's heart pounded in his chest, a primal fear mingling with a newfound sense of exhilaration. The regime's control was crumbling, its carefully constructed facade shattering under the weight of a collective defiance. He looked at his squad, their faces hidden behind their visors, their bodies tense with anticipation. He saw the doubt in their eyes, the questions that mirrored his own. *** Neon City, Sector 4, Block C. The once familiar cityscape had transformed into a war zone. Sirens wailed, their shrill cries piercing the night, a discordant symphony of chaos and fear. The towering skyscrapers, once symbols of the regime's power, now loomed like silent sentinels over a city on the brink of collapse. Viktor and his squad crouched behind an overturned transport vehicle, the acrid smoke from the burning building stinging their eyes and lungs. The enforcers, their once impenetrable formation now scattered and disjointed, exchanged sporadic fire with unseen assailants. Their energy blasts the darkness with fleeting bursts of light. "We're surrounded," a young enforcer, his voice cracking with panic, shouted above the din. Viktor, his senses heightened, scanned the surrounding buildings, his visor's thermal imaging revealing the heat signatures of their attackers. They were outnumbered, their position compromised. The resistance fighters, their movements swift and coordinated, were closing in, their weapons trained on the enforcers. "Fall back," Viktor ordered, his voice a strained bark. "Regroup at the main intersection." The enforcers, their discipline faltering, scrambled to obey, their retreat a chaotic dance of desperation. But the resistance fighters were relentless, their attacks precise and merciless. Energy blasts sizzled through the air, shattering windows, tearing through metal, and leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Viktor felt a burning sensation in his shoulder, a searing pain that sent a wave of nausea through him. He glanced down to see a smoking hole in his uniform, blood seeping through the torn fabric. He stumbled, his vision blurring, his grip on his baton weakening. He had always prided himself on his resilience, his unwavering loyalty to the central authority. But now, faced with the harsh reality of the regime's brutality, his resolve crumbled. He saw the faces of the resistance fighters, their eyes burning with a righteous fury, their actions fueled by a desperate hope for a better future. He saw the echoes of his own daughter's defiance, her words ringing in his ears like a haunting melody. "Is that the price of your precious order?" The question reverberated through his mind, a seismic tremor that shattered the foundations of his beliefs. The regime he had served, the order he had upheld, now seemed like a cruel parody of justice, a twisted mockery of peace. He looked at his fellow enforcers, their faces masked by emotionless visors, their actions driven by blind obedience. Were they truly protectors of the people, or were they merely tools of oppression, perpetuating a system built on fear and control? The answer, he realized with a sickening clarity, was both terrifying and liberating. He was on the wrong side of history. With a surge of adrenaline, Viktor made a decision that would change the course of his life, a choice that would forever alter his destiny. He raised his baton, not towards the resistance fighters, but towards his own squad. "Enough," he roared, his voice amplified by the vocoder, cutting through the chaos like a thunderclap. "We are not their enemies. We are their protectors." His words hung in the air, a challenge to the very core of the regime's indoctrination. The enforcers, their programming momentarily disrupted, hesitated, their weapons wavering. And in that moment of hesitation, Viktor saw a flicker of recognition in their eyes, a spark of humanity that had long been suppressed. The battle for Neon City had reached a turning point, a confluence of wills that would determine the fate of a city, a people, and a revolution. The battlefield held its breath, the echoes of Viktor's defiance hanging heavy in the smoke-filled air. The resistance fighters, their weapons still trained on the enforcers, watched in stunned silence as their former adversaries grappled with an internal conflict that mirrored their own. The enforcers, their visors reflecting the flickering flames of the burning building, stood frozen, their programmed obedience clashing with a newfound sense of moral ambiguity. Viktor's words, a crack in the regime's carefully constructed facade, had exposed the raw truth that lay beneath the surface of their indoctrination. "We are not their enemies. We are their protectors." The words reverberated through their minds, a discordant melody that challenged the very foundation of their beliefs. They had been trained to see the resistors as criminals, as threats to the stability of Neon City. But now, faced with Viktor's defiance, they were forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that they might be the ones perpetuating the injustice. One by one, the enforcers lowered their weapons, their gazes shifting from the resistance fighters to their own commander. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crackling of the flames and the distant wail of sirens. Captain Eva, her face contorted in a mask of disbelief and fury, stepped forward, her voice a venomous hiss. "Viktor, what are you doing? You're betraying the central authority." Viktor met her gaze, his eyes burning with a newfound conviction. "I'm not betraying anyone, Captain. I'm upholding my oath to protect the citizens of Neon City, and right now, the greatest threat to their safety is the regime itself." Eva's hand twitched towards her sidearm, her anger threatening to boil over. But before she could react, a ripple of defiance spread through the ranks of the enforcers. Several of them stepped forward, their weapons lowered, their voices echoing Viktor's sentiment. "He's right, Captain," one of them said, his voice surprisingly steady. "We've been blinded by our duty, our loyalty, but we can't ignore the truth any longer." Another enforcer nodded, his visor reflecting the flickering flames. "The regime is corrupt. It's time we stood with the people, not against them." Eva's face paled, her authority crumbling before her eyes. The mutiny she had feared, the rebellion she had sought to suppress, was now taking root within her own ranks. The resistance fighters, sensing the shift in the balance of power, lowered their weapons, their expressions a mix of cautious optimism and disbelief. The once implacable enemies now stood on the precipice of an uneasy alliance, united by a shared sense of injustice and a yearning for freedom. Anya, watching from the shadows, felt a surge of hope coursing through her veins. The enforcers' defiance, their willingness to question the regime's authority, was a testament to the power of the human spirit, its unyielding desire for truth and justice. It was a moment of profound significance, a turning point in the battle for Neon City. The lines between oppressor and oppressed were blurring, the once rigid boundaries of loyalty and defiance dissolving into a complex tapestry of human emotions and aspirations. The regime's carefully constructed facade was cracking, revealing the fragility of its power, the vulnerability of its control. And in the heart of this fractured mirror, a new reflection emerged, a vision of a future where humanity, united in its defiance, could reclaim its freedom and forge its own destiny. The battlefield, once a scene of chaotic violence, now held a fragile stillness, pregnant with the potential for both unity and further conflict. The enforcers, their visors reflecting the flickering flames and the faces of their former adversaries, stood at a crossroads, their choices poised to shape the destiny of Neon City. Viktor, his wounded shoulder throbbing with a dull ache, stepped forward, his voice echoing through the smoke-filled air. "We have a choice," he declared, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his fellow enforcers. "We can continue to serve a corrupt regime, to be instruments of oppression, or we can stand with the people, fight for their freedom, and reclaim our own humanity." His words hung in the air, a challenge to the very core of their indoctrination. The enforcers, their expressions masked by their visors, wrestled with the weight of his words, the conflict between duty and conscience raging within them. One by one, they made their choice. Some, their loyalty to the regime unshakable, raised their weapons, their visors glowing with a renewed intensity. Others, their hearts swayed by Viktor's words and the echoes of their own suppressed doubts, lowered their batons, their stances softening. The division was swift, the lines drawn in the shifting sands of allegiance. The air crackled with tension, the fragile peace threatening to shatter at any moment. Captain Eva, her face contorted with a mix of fury and disbelief, glared at Viktor, her voice a venomous hiss. "You're a traitor, Viktor. You'll pay for this." Viktor met her gaze, his resolve unwavering. "I'm not a traitor, Eva. I'm a patriot. I'm fighting for the future of our city, our people." Eva lunged at him, her baton crackling with energy. Viktor, despite his injury, reacted with surprising agility, deflecting her blow and sending her stumbling back. The remaining loyalist enforcers opened fire, their energy blast arcing through the air, targeting Viktor and the resistors who had rallied to his side. The resistance fighters returned fire, their weapons blazing, the once deserted streets now ablaze with the fury of battle. Anya, emerging from the shadows, joined the fray, her movements a blur of precision and grace. She fought alongside the enforcers who had chosen defiance, their combined strength a formidable force against the regime's loyalists. The battle raged, a chaotic dance of light and shadow, of courage and desperation. The citizens of Neon City, once passive observers, now found themselves caught in the crossfire, their homes and livelihoods threatened by the escalating conflict. A new spirit emerged, a collective defiance that transcended fear and uncertainty. The people, inspired by Anya's courage and Viktor's betrayal, took to the streets, their voices a chorus of resistance, their actions a testament to the unyielding human spirit. The regime's control, once absolute, now teetered on the brink of collapse. The spark of rebellion had ignited a wildfire, its flames consuming the city, its heat forging a new reality. And in the heart of this inferno, within the clash of wills and the echoes of a shattered past, a new dawn was breaking, a dawn of hope, of freedom, of a future where humanity would reclaim its rightful place in the world it had built. The once ordered streets of Neon City now throbbed with a pulse of rebellion. The uprising, once confined to a single marketplace, had erupted into a citywide conflagration, a symphony of defiance that echoed through every sector, every alleyway, every heart. The regime's enforcers, their ranks now fractured and their morale plummeting, struggled to contain the spreading chaos. The citizens, their fear replaced by a righteous fury, fought back with whatever weapons they could muster. Makeshift barricades sprang up in the streets, cobblestones and overturned vehicles transformed into symbols of resistance. In the heart of Sector 4, Viktor and his newfound allies fought alongside the resistance fighters, their combined strength a formidable force against the regime's loyalists. The air crackled with the energy of blaster fire and the clash of metal on metal, the once pristine buildings now scarred with the wounds of battle. Anya, her movements a blur of calculated aggression, darted through the chaos, her agility and precision honed by years of training. She disarmed enforcers with a practiced ease, her strikes swift and decisive, her every action a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But the regime's forces were not easily deterred. Captain Eva, her rage fueled by Viktor's betrayal, led a contingent of loyalist enforcers, their faces contorted with a mix of fear and fanaticism. They fought with a desperate ferocity, their energy blasts tearing through the air, their batons cracking against flesh and bone. The battle raged on, a brutal ballet of violence and defiance. The citizens of Neon City, caught in the crossfire, witnessed the true nature of the regime they had once blindly obeyed. The enforcers, once seen as protectors of order, now revealed their true colors, their brutality a stark contrast to the resistors' desperate fight for freedom. In the Undercity, Anya and Emily monitored the unfolding events, their hearts pounding with a mix of hope and dread. The uprising had exceeded their wildest expectations, but they also knew that the regime's response would be swift and merciless. "We need to escalate our efforts," Anya said, her voice grim. "The people are fighting back, but they need our support." Emily nodded, her expression resolute. "We'll mobilize our sleeper cells, activate our hidden caches. It's time to show the regime the true strength of the resistance." As the battle for Neon City raged on, the unseen observer watched from the shadows, their digital presence a silent witness to the unfolding chaos. They had planted the seeds of rebellion, nurtured the spark of defiance, and now they watched as the flames of revolution consumed the city. Their motives remained enigmatic, their ultimate goal shrouded in mystery. But in the faces of the resistors, in their unwavering courage and their desperate fight for freedom, the observer saw a reflection of their own hidden desires, their own yearning for a world free from oppression and control. The battle for Neon City was not just a struggle for power, but a clash of ideologies, a conflict between the forces of control and the unyielding spirit of humanity. And as the city burned, its neon lights extinguished by the smoke and flames, the observer knew that the outcome of this battle would shape the destiny of not just Neon City, but the entire galaxy. High above the chaos-stricken streets, within the towering monolith that symbolized the regime's power, the Central Authority's council chambers echoed with a discordant symphony of panic and disbelief. The holographic projections displayed a city in flames, a populace turned against its masters. The carefully crafted illusion of control, the meticulously maintained veneer of order, was crumbling before their very eyes. The council members, their faces etched with a mix of fear and fury, exchanged heated accusations and desperate pleas for solutions. The once unquestioned authority of the Central Authority now seemed fragile, its power base teetering on the precipice of collapse. "This is anarchy," one council member, his voice trembling with rage, declared. "We must deploy the full force of our military, crush this rebellion before it spreads further." Another member, his face pale with apprehension, countered, "But a full-scale military intervention could lead to even greater chaos, more civilian casualties. We risk alienating the entire population." The debate raged, a cacophony of conflicting voices and clashing agendas. But amidst the chaos, one voice remained silent, its presence a brooding shadow in the opulent chamber. Director Silas, the enigmatic head of the Central Authority's Intelligence Division, observed the council's frantic deliberations with a cold, calculating gaze. His fingers tapped a rhythmic pattern on the polished surface of the table, his mind processing the unfolding events with a chilling clarity. He had foreseen this uprising, anticipated the cracks that would appear in the regime's facade. The seeds of rebellion had been sown long ago, carefully nurtured in the fertile ground of human discontent. But now, as the flames of revolution engulfed Neon City, Silas saw an opportunity, a chance to reshape the narrative, to solidify his own power within the crumbling hierarchy. He rose from his seat, his voice cutting through the clamor like a surgeon's scalpel. "The rebellion is not a threat to our power," he declared, his tone measured and precise. "It is an opportunity to demonstrate our strength, our unwavering resolve." The council members turned to him, their eyes wide with a mix of surprise and apprehension. Silas, known for his enigmatic nature and ruthless efficiency, rarely spoke in such public forums. His words carried a weight, a gravitas that demanded attention. "We will not cower before these insurgents," he continued, his voice rising in intensity. "We will not negotiate with terrorists. We will crush them with the full might of the Central Authority, and we will make an example of them that will echo through the ages." His words, delivered with a chilling conviction, sent a shiver down the spines of the council members. They saw in Silas a reflection of their own deepest fears, their darkest desires. He was a man who understood the true nature of power, the ruthless calculus of control. And they knew, with a sickening certainty, that he would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. As the council members debated the merits of Silas's proposal, a hidden camera, nestled in the shadows of the chamber, captured every word, every gesture, every flicker of emotion. The unseen observer, their digital presence a silent sentinel, watched the proceedings with a growing sense of satisfaction. The regime was fracturing, its internal divisions mirroring the chaos that engulfed the city below. The seeds of doubt, carefully planted and nurtured, were now bearing fruit. The unseen allies' plan was unfolding, its intricate web of manipulation and deception tightening around the Central Authority. *** Neon City Resistance Safehouse. The dimly lit safehouse was a hidden sanctuary within the chaos of the uprising. The resistance leaders, their faces etched with a mixture of determination and anxiety, huddled around a makeshift command center, their eyes glued to the holographic projections that displayed the unfolding events across the city. Anya, her fingers dancing across the console, monitored the enforcers' movements, her mind racing to anticipate their next move. The coordinated attacks had disrupted their patrols, but the regime's response was swift and brutal. Enforcer units, bolstered by armored vehicles and aerial drones, were converging on the hotspots of resistance, their presence a suffocating wave of black uniforms and gleaming weaponry. "They're adapting," Emily observed, her voice grim. "They're learning from our tactics, closing the gaps in their defenses." Marcus, his weathered face hardened by years of conflict, nodded in agreement. "They're regrouping, consolidating their forces. We need to strike again before they regain control." Alia's gaze shifted to the live feed from Sector 4, where Viktor and his newfound allies were engaged in a fierce firefight with the loyalist enforcers. The scene was a chaotic ballet of destruction, energy blast the night, screams and shouts echoing through the deserted streets. "Viktor's holding his own," she said, her voice a mixture of admiration and concern. "But they're outnumbered, outgunned. We need to send reinforcements." The resistance leaders exchanged glances, their faces reflecting the grim reality of their situation. Their resources were limited, and their numbers dwindling. Every decision, every move, carried the weight of potential consequences. "We can't risk exposing our position," one of the leaders, a young woman named Zara, objected. If we send reinforcements, the enforcers will track them back to us. We'll lose this safe house, our command center. Alia's jaw tightened. We can't abandon Viktor. He's a valuable asset, a symbol of the growing cracks within the regime. Emily's eyes blazed with a fierce determination. We'll find a way. We have to. We can't let them crush this rebellion before it even gains momentum. The debate raged, each leader voicing their concerns, their hopes, their fears. The fate of the resistance, the future of Neon City, hung in the balance. And as they argued, the unseen observer watched from the shadows, their digital presence a silent specter in the heart of the rebellion. They had witnessed the spark of defiance ignite, the flames of revolution spread. Now they waited, their intentions obscured, their role in this unfolding drama yet to be revealed. The game was far from over, its players locked in a deadly dance of power and resistance. And the unseen observer, the master manipulator, held the strings. Neon City, Central Authority Headquarters. High above the embattled streets, within the sterile confines of the Central Authority's headquarters, Director Silas observed the unfolding chaos with a detached curiosity. The holographic projections that lined his office walls painted a vivid picture of the city's descent into anarchy. Smoke plumes rose from distant buildings, the staccato rhythm of blaster fire punctuated the night, and the once orderly grid of Neon City pulsed with the erratic heartbeat of rebellion. A subtle smile played on his lips, a predator's grin at the sight of his prey ensnared in its own trap. The uprising, the defiance, the chaos, it was all part of his grand design, a carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction and rebirth. He had spent years laying the groundwork, planting seeds of discontent, nurturing the flames of rebellion in the hearts of the oppressed. He had manipulated events, exploited vulnerabilities, and orchestrated the perfect storm that now threatened to consume the Central Authority's iron grip. But his motives were not those of a simple anarchist. Silas was no idealist, no champion of the downtrodden. He was a pragmatist, a master manipulator who saw the rebellion as an opportunity, a stepping stone to a new era of power and control. The Central Authority, in its arrogance and complacency, had grown weak, its leaders blinded by their own hubris. They had underestimated the human spirit, its capacity for resilience and defiance, and now they were paying the price. Silas, however, had recognized the potential of this unrest, the raw energy that simmered beneath the surface of Neon City. He had seen the hunger for change in the eyes of the people, the yearning for a future free from the regime's suffocating control. And he intended to harness that energy, to channel it towards his own ends. He turned to his trusted aide, a young woman named Anya, her face a mask of unwavering loyalty. "It's time," he said, his voice a soft whisper that carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken secrets. Anya nodded, her eyes gleaming with a cold determination. She had been Silas's protégé, groomed for this very moment. She had infiltrated the resistance, gained their trust, and become a symbol of their defiance. But her true allegiance lay with Silas, her every move a calculated step in his grand scheme. "The bait has been cast," Silas continued, his voice laced with a hint of anticipation. "The enforcers are distracted, their ranks divided. Now we strike." Anya's lips curled into a cruel smile. "The resistance will fall, Director, and when it does, you will rise." Silas nodded, his gaze returning to the holographic display. Neon City, Sector 7, Extraction Point. The rusted metal door of the abandoned warehouse creaked open, revealing a sliver of the dimly lit interior. Marcus, his weathered face etched with 1,000 battles, stepped aside, allowing Anya to enter first. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of dust and disuse, a stark contrast to the neon-drenched streets above. Anya's heart hammered in her chest, a frantic rhythm that echoed the urgency of their mission. She clutched the data chip tighter, its cool metallic surface a stark reminder of the lives lost, the sacrifices made in the pursuit of truth. "The transport is waiting," Marcus whispered, his voice a gravelly rasp that cut through the silence. Once you're clear, we'll initiate the next phase." Anya nodded, her gaze sweeping across the dimly lit space, searching for any sign of danger. The warehouse was a labyrinth of shadows, its towering shelves and discarded machinery casting long, distorted silhouettes that danced in the flickering light. A sudden clang echoed through the cavernous space, sending a jolt of adrenaline through Anya's veins. She spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for her concealed weapon. "It's just a rat," Marcus reassured her, his hand resting on his own sidearm. "The Undercity is full of them." Anya's breath hitched, her heart still racing. The constant fear, the relentless pursuit by the regime's enforcers, had frayed her nerves, leaving her hyper-vigilant, every shadow a potential threat. She followed Marcus deeper into the warehouse, their footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The extraction point, a hidden alcove concealed behind a stack of crates, was their only hope of escape, their lifeline to a world beyond the regime's iron grip. As they approached the alcove, Anya's senses sharpened, her instincts screaming a warning. The air crackled with a subtle energy, a disruption in the familiar rhythm of the Undercity. "Something's not right," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus, his brow furrowed in concentration, nodded in agreement. "I can feel it too," he said, his hand tightening on his weapon. "Stay alert." They moved cautiously towards the alcove, their bodies tense, their every movement measured. The shadows seemed to deepen, the air growing thick with an unseen presence. A low growl echoed through the warehouse, a guttural sound that sent shivers down Anya's spine. A pair of glowing eyes materialized from the darkness, their predatory gaze fixed on the two figures. A hulking shape emerged, its form a grotesque mockery of a human, its flesh augmented with cybernetic enhancements that pulsed with an eerie luminescence. It was an enforcer, but not like any Anya had ever seen before. Its body was a patchwork of metal and muscle, its face a grotesque mask of twisted metal and exposed circuitry. Well, a distorted voice crackled from the creature's vocoder. "What do we have here? A little birdie trying to escape the cage?" Anya's heart sank. They had been betrayed, their escape route compromised. The enforcer, its presence a chilling reminder of the regime's ruthlessness, advanced towards them, its every step a heavy thud that reverberated through the warehouse. Marcus stepped forward, his weapon raised. "Stay back," he warned, his voice a low growl. "We're not going down without a fight." The augmented enforcer laughed, a harsh, metallic sound that grated against Anya's ears. "A fight? You, against me? You're delusional." It lunged, its movements a blur of unnatural speed and power. Marcus fired his weapon, the energy blast striking the enforcer's chest, but the augmented armor absorbed the impact, barely slowing its advance. Anya, her mind racing, knew they were outmatched. This was no ordinary enforcer. It was a weapon, a monster created by the regime to hunt down and eliminate those who dared to defy its authority. But she would not surrender. She would not let them silence her, extinguish the flame of rebellion she had ignited. With a defiant cry, she charged, her body moving with a grace and agility that belied the fear that gnawed at her heart. She dodged the enforcer's blows, her movements a desperate dance of survival, her every strike fueled by a primal rage that demanded release. The warehouse became a battleground, the clash of metal and flesh echoing through the dimly lit space. Anya fought with a ferocity that surprised even herself, her every move a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But the augmented enforcer was relentless, its strength and speed overwhelming. Anya's attacks, once precise and effective, now seemed futile, her blows glancing off the creature's armored hide. She stumbled, her breath ragged, her vision blurring. The enforcer loomed over her, its grotesque face a mask of triumph. "It's over, resistor," it hissed, its voice a cruel mockery of her defiance. "Your rebellion ends here." It raised its baton, the energy core glowing with a malevolent intensity. Anya closed her eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But the blow never came. ***, Neon City, Undercity, extraction point. A deafening crack echoed through the warehouse, followed by a startled grunt. Anya's eyes snapped open, her vision filled with the sight of the augmented enforcer reeling back, its baton clattering to the ground. A smoking hole marred its once impenetrable armor, a testament to a force that had defied its cybernetic enhancements. From the shadows, a figure emerged, their form cloaked in a dark, flowing garment that seemed to absorb the dim light. Their face was concealed by a hood, their features hidden in the anonymity of the Undercity. But their eyes, burning with an intensity that pierced the gloom, were unmistakable. It was the unseen observer, the ghost in the machine, their presence a tangible manifestation of the digital whispers that had haunted the regime's network. The augmented enforcer, its rage momentarily eclipsed by confusion, turned its gaze towards the newcomer, its vocoder sputtering incoherently. Who are you?" it demanded, its voice a garbled mix of synthetic tones and primal fear. The observer remained silent, their stance unwavering, their presence radiating an aura of quiet power. They raised a hand, their fingers tracing intricate patterns in the air, as if weaving an invisible tapestry of energy. The augmented enforcer stumbled back, its cybernetic implants malfunctioning, its movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. Its once formidable body, a testament to the regime's technological prowess, now betrayed it, its systems succumbing to an unseen force. Anya and Marcus watched in awe, their hearts pounding with a mix of disbelief and exhilaration. The unseen observer, the enigmatic ally who had aided their escape, was now revealing their true power, their mastery over the very fabric of the digital realm. The enforcer's struggles intensified, its body convulsing as its systems overloaded. Sparks flew from its exposed circuitry, its vocoder emitting a final, desperate screech before falling silent. The augmented enforcer collapsed, its once imposing form now a lifeless husk, a testament to the unseen observer's power. The observer turned to Anya and Marcus, their hooded face still concealed in shadow. "It is done," they said, their voice a soft whisper that carried an otherworldly echo. "You are safe, for now." Anya's voice trembled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You saved our lives." The observer inclined their head, a gesture of acknowledgement. "Your fight is not yet over," they warned, their voice a somber reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. "The regime will not surrender easily. They will seek revenge, and their reach extends far beyond these walls." Marcus's grip tightened on his weapon, his resolve unwavering. "We're ready for them," he said, his voice filled with a grim determination. "We will not back down. Not now, not ever." The observer nodded, their forms shimmering as they prepared to depart. "Remember," they said, their voice fading into the shadows, "the true power lies not in weapons or technology, but in the unyielding spirit of humanity. It is a force that can overcome any obstacle, any adversary." And with a final flicker of light, they vanished, leaving Anya and Marcus alone in the dimly lit warehouse. The extraction point awaited, a gateway to a new chapter in their fight for freedom. But the encounter with the unseen observer had left an indelible mark on their souls, a reminder that the battle for Neon City was not just a physical conflict, but a struggle for the very essence of humanity. As they stepped into the waiting transport, their hearts filled with a newfound hope, they knew that they were not alone in this fight. The unseen ally, the ghost in the machine, was watching over them, their presence a silent promise of support, a whisper of a future where humanity would once again be free. The transport, a nondescript hover van retrofitted for stealth and speed, glided through the Undercity's labyrinthine tunnels, its engines humming a low, reassuring melody. Anya and Marcus sat in the dimly lit cabin, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The escape had been harrowing, a desperate dance with death that had left them both physically and emotionally drained. But they had survived, thanks to the intervention of their unseen ally. "Who do you think they are?" Anya asked, her voice a hushed whisper in the confined space. Marcus shrugged, his weathered face creased in thought. "I don't know. But they're powerful, that's for sure, and they're on our side." Anya nodded, a flicker of hope warming her heart. The unseen allies' actions had given them a lifeline, a chance to regroup and continue the fight. But their motives remained a mystery, their true identity shrouded in secrecy. "We need to find out who they are," she said, her voice filled with a quiet determination. "They could be a valuable asset to the resistance." Marcus's lips curved into a wry smile. "Or a dangerous wildcard. We don't know their agenda, their ultimate goals. We have to tread carefully." Anya's gaze drifted towards the window, the Undercity's tunnels blurring past in a dizzying kaleidoscope of shadows and light. She thought of the countless others who were still trapped in Neon City, their lives at the mercy of the regime's iron fist. "We can't let them suffer any longer," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We have to break the regime's control, give the people back their freedom." Marcus nodded, his eyes reflecting her own burning resolve. "We will, Anya, but it won't be easy. The Central Authority is still a formidable enemy." The transport slowed, its engines sputtering as it approached a hidden exit, a concealed hatch that led to the outskirts of the city. The driver, a seasoned resistance operative, checked the surroundings, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of enforcer patrols. "Coast is clear," he announced, his voice crackling over the comms. "Prepare for extraction." Anya and Marcus braced themselves as the transport ascended, its powerful thrusters propelling it through the hidden hatch and into the night sky. The city's skyline, a jagged silhouette against the backdrop of a polluted sunset, receded into the distance. As they soared above the sprawling metropolis, Anya couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Neon City, for all its flaws, was her home. It was where she had grown up, where she had forged friendships, where she had first tasted the bitter sting of oppression. But it was also a city in chains, its spirit suffocated by the regime's suffocating control, and Anya knew that she couldn't return, not until the Central Authority had been toppled, its tyranny replaced by a new dawn of freedom. The transport banked sharply, its course set for a remote outpost in the desert, a haven for the resistance. As they flew through the night, Anya's thoughts turned to the future, to the challenges that lay ahead. The rebellion had ignited, its flames spreading throughout Neon City, but the true battle was yet to come. The regime would not surrender easily, its enforcers and its technology a formidable obstacle. The transport, a sleek vessel that defied the oppressive aesthetics of the regime, cut through the night sky like a silent predator. Its engines hummed with a subdued power, its navigation lights dimmed to avoid detection, a stark contrast to the garish neon glow that perpetually bathed Neon City. Inside the dimly lit cabin, Anya and Marcus sat in a shared silence, their bodies weary, but their spirits buoyed by the adrenaline of their escape. The cityscape of Neon City, a sprawling expanse of steel and neon, gradually shrank beneath them, its artificial glow fading into the inky blackness of the desert night. The transition was jarring, the stark contrast between the urban jungle and the desolate wilderness, a visual echo of the conflict that raged within their own hearts. The oppressive weight of the city, its surveillance and its enforcers, seemed to lift with every mile they put between them and its towering spires. Anya gazed out the window, her eyes tracing the contours of the distant dunes, their undulating forms a silent testament to the passage of time and the relentless forces of nature. The desert, in its vast emptiness, offered a stark counterpoint to the claustrophobic confines of Neon City. It was a place of both isolation and liberation, a sanctuary where the whispers of the regime could not penetrate. "We're almost there," the pilot, a young woman with a determined set to her jaw, announced over the comms. "Eat 5 minutes." Anya nodded, her gaze returning to the interior of the cabin. Marcus sat beside her, his weathered face etched with the lines of a life lived in the shadows. His eyes, usually hardened by years of conflict, now held a flicker of warmth as he watched Anya. "You did well back there," he said, his voice a gravelly rasp. "You held your own against that abomination." Anya shrugged, a self-deprecating smile playing on her lips. "I just did what I had to do. I couldn't let them take me." Marcus's lips curved into a genuine smile. "You're more than just a courier, Anya. You're a symbol of hope, a reminder that the human spirit can't be so easily broken. His words warmed Anya's heart, a welcome balm against the lingering chill of fear and uncertainty. She had never sought to be a symbol, a leader. She had simply wanted to live her life, to pursue her dreams, to be free. But the regime had taken that away from her, and in its place, they had ignited a fire within her, a burning desire for justice, for a world where humanity could thrive without the shackles of oppression. "We'll win this fight, Marcus," she said, her voice filled with a quiet conviction that belied the tremble in her hands. Marcus nodded, his gaze turning towards the window. The first hints of dawn were painting the horizon with streaks of orange and purple, a promise of a new day, a new beginning. "We will," he said, his voice a solemn vow. "For Owen, for Lena, for all those who have suffered under the regime's tyranny." The transport descended, its landing gear extending with a soft hiss. The desert floor rushed up to meet them, the impact jolting Anya from her thoughts. The cabin door slid open, revealing a group of resistance fighters waiting to greet them, their faces a mix of relief and steely resolve. Anya stepped out into the cool desert air, the vast expanse stretching before her like an endless ocean of sand. The outpost, a cluster of low-slung buildings nestled amidst the dunes, was a stark contrast to the towering cityscape she had left behind. It was a haven, a place of refuge, but also a reminder of the long and arduous road that lay ahead. As she followed Marcus towards the main building, a cold shiver ran down her spine. The feeling of being watched, that unsettling presence that had haunted her in the Undercity, intensified. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes scanning the dunes, but there was nothing there, only the shifting shadows cast by the rising sun. Yet the feeling persisted, a prickling sensation at the nape of her neck, a whisper of danger carried on the desert wind. She quickened her pace, her hand instinctively reaching for the concealed weapon at her ankle. The unseen eyes followed her every move, their gaze a silent predator stalking its prey. The unseen eyes followed Anya's every move, their gaze a silent predator stalking its prey in the vast expanse of the desert. The prickling sensation at the nape of her neck intensified with each step, a chilling reminder that she was not alone, that danger lurked just beyond the periphery of her vision. She quickened her pace, her hand instinctively clutching the concealed weapon at her ankle. The resistance outpost, once a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape, now seemed ominously vulnerable, its low-slung buildings offering little protection against the unseen threat that stalked the dunes. Marcus, sensing her unease, glanced over his shoulder, his weathered face etched with concern. "What is it, Anya?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that barely disturbed the desert silence. Anya hesitated, unsure how to articulate the nameless dread that coiled within her. I feel like we're being watched," she finally admitted, her voice a strained whisper. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his gaze sweeping across the dunes, searching for any sign of movement, any anomaly that might betray their pursuer. But the desert remained stubbornly still, its undulating sands offering no clues, no answers. "It's probably just the aftereffects of your escape," he reassured her, his voice gruff but gentle. "The regime's surveillance has a way of getting under your skin, making you see shadows where there are none." Anya nodded, forcing a smile. "Perhaps you're right," she said, though the unease lingered, a cold knot in the pit of her stomach. They reached the main building, its heavy metal door a stark contrast to the organic curves of the surrounding dunes. Marcus punched in the access code, the door sliding open with a pneumatic hiss that echoed through the silence. Inside, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to the oppressive stillness of the desert. The command center, a dimly lit cavern carved into the sandstone, buzzed with activity. Holographic displays flickered with tactical data, radio chatter crackled through the speakers, and the faces of the resistance fighters reflected a mix of determination and anxiety. Alia, her sharp features deep by the soft glow of a monitor, looked up as they entered, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. "Anya, Marcus, you're back," she said, her voice a welcome sound in the tense atmosphere. "We were starting to worry." Anya forced a smile, her unease momentarily forgotten in the warmth of their welcome. We had a bit of a detour, she explained, her gaze briefly meeting Marcus's. Emily, her arm bandaged but her spirit unbroken, approached them, her eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "What happened?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anya recounted their encounter with the augmented enforcer, the chilling realization that their escape route had been compromised, the sudden appearance of the unseen ally, and their miraculous rescue. As she spoke, a hush fell over the room, the resistance fighters listening with rapt attention. The unseen ally, their motives still shrouded in mystery, had become a figure of both hope and trepidation. Their intervention had saved Anya and Marcus, but it had also raised questions about their true intentions, their role in the unfolding rebellion. Alia's brow furrowed in concentration. "The augmented enforcer," she mused, her voice thoughtful. "It's a new development, a sign that the regime is escalating its tactics, deploying its most advanced weapons against us." Marcus nodded grimly. "They're getting desperate. They know their grip is slipping, and they'll do anything to maintain control." But as they strategized, a subtle vibration rippled through the outpost, a tremor that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the desert. The lights flickered, the holographic display momentarily glitched, and a wave of unease washed over the room. Alia's eyes widened, her instincts screaming a warning. "Something's coming," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the growing rumble that now shook the very foundations of the outpost. The tremor that had shaken the outpost intensified, sending a wave of unease through the assembled resistance leaders. The low, guttural roar that had echoed through the desert now resonated with terrifying clarity, a monstrous symphony that heralded the arrival of an unseen terror. Alia, her senses heightened, rushed to the nearest window, her gaze sweeping across the vast expanse of sand. The horizon, once a serene canvas of orange and purple hues, was now a churning maelstrom of dust and wind, a colossal sandstorm that blotted out the sun and cast the outpost in an eerie twilight. "Sandstorm," she shouted, her voice barely audible above the rising tempest. "A massive one, bearing down on us." Panic erupted in the command center. The resistance fighters, their faces etched with a mix of fear and determination, scrambled to secure the outpost. Emily, her voice cutting through the chaos like a whip, barked orders. "Seal all entrances, activate the emergency power grid, secure all loose equipment." The once peaceful sanctuary transformed into a hive of activity. Doors slammed shut, windows were barricaded, and sandbags were piled against the walls. The children, their laughter silenced, huddled together in a corner, their wide eyes reflecting the primal terror of the storm's wrath. Anya, her heart pounding in her chest, joined the others in their frantic efforts. She helped secure the communication equipment, her mind racing. The sandstorm, a force of nature unleashed upon them, served as a stark reminder of the unforgiving environment they had chosen as their refuge. But was it merely a natural phenomenon? Anya couldn't shake the feeling that this storm was somehow connected to the unseen observer, a manifestation of their power, a test of their resilience. The timing was too coincidental, the intensity too unnatural. The first wave of the storm hit the outpost with a deafening roar. The wind howled like a chorus of banshees. The sand blasted against the walls like a relentless barrage of tiny projectiles. The building shuddered, its foundations straining against the onslaught. Inside, the lights flickered, the emergency power grid struggling to maintain its hold. The holographic display, their window to the wider world, now flickered with static, its images distorted and fragmented. Alia's face was etched with concern as she monitored the outpost's systems. "The storm's disrupting our communications," she reported, her voice strained. "We're cut off." Emily's expression hardened. "We need to weather this storm," she said, her voice a steely resolve. "We can't let it break us." But as the storm intensified, the outpost's defenses began to crumble. The wind tore at the roof, the sand seeped through the cracks in the walls, and the air grew thick with dust, making each breath a struggle. Anya, her lungs burning from the gritty air, fought to maintain her composure. She had faced the regime's enforcers, defied the Weaver's power, But this was a different kind of enemy, a primal force that cared nothing for their struggles, their hopes, their dreams. It was a test of their very survival, a trial by fire that would forge them anew or consume them entirely. A chilling thought crept into her mind. Was this the unseen allies' doing? A demonstration of their power? A warning? Or something far more sinister? Suddenly, amidst the chaos, a voice echoed through the comm system, cutting through the static and the howling wind. It was a familiar voice, one that sent a shiver of both fear and anticipation down Anya's spine. "This is Commander Dragon," the voice announced, its tone a stark contrast to the robotic monotone of the enforcers. "I'm transmitting on an unsecured channel. Can you hear me?" A wave of stunned silence washed over the command center, broken only by the relentless howl of the sandstorm outside. Commander Dragon's voice, a familiar yet unexpected intrusion, crackled through the comm system, its tone a stark contrast to the robotic monotone of the enforcers they had come to despise. Anya's heart hammered in her chest, a mixture of disbelief and trepidation. Her father, the stalwart commander of the regime's enforcers, was reaching out to them, the resistors, on an unsecured channel. It was a move that defied logic, a breach of protocol that could have dire consequences. Anya, her brow furrowed in concentration, exchanged a meaningful glance with Emily. "Should we answer?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm's fury. Emily hesitated, her instincts warring with her curiosity. "It could be a trap," she cautioned, "a way to lure us out, to expose our location." Marcus, his weathered face etched with a lifetime of suspicion, nodded in agreement. "The regime is cunning. They'll use any means necessary to crush the rebellion." But Anya, her heart torn between loyalty to the resistance and the lingering bond of blood, couldn't ignore her father's plea. "We have to at least listen," she insisted, her voice a mix of defiance and desperation. "He's my father. He wouldn't betray us." Anya, after a moment of deliberation, nodded. "All right, Anya, but we proceed with caution. Keep your weapon ready." She activated the comm system, her voice steady as she replied, "This is Anya Thorne, leader of the Neon City Resistance. We hear you, Commander Dragon. What do you want?" A tense silence followed, the only sound the howling wind and the crackling static of the unsecured channel. Then, Dragon's voice returned, heavy with a burden Anya had never heard before. "I need your help," he said, his words a stark admission of vulnerability. "The regime is out of control. They're planning a brutal crackdown, a massacre that will drown the city in blood." A wave of shock rippled through the command center. The resistors exchanged uneasy glances, their minds grappling with the implications of Dragon's words. The man who had once been the symbol of the regime's iron fist was now painting a picture of its darkest intentions. "Why are you telling us this?" Emily demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. "Why should we trust you?" Dragon's voice faltered, his words heavy with regret. "I've made mistakes, grave mistakes. I've been blind to the regime's true nature, its cruelty, its disregard for human life. But I can't stand by and watch them commit atrocities in my name any longer." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "My daughter, Lena, she opened my eyes. She showed me the truth, the suffering that the regime inflicts on its own people. I can't betray her, not again. I can't betray my own humanity." Anya's heart ached for her father, the conflict in his voice a mirror of her own internal struggle. She had always believed in his inherent goodness, his unwavering sense of duty. But now she saw a man torn between loyalty and conscience, a man on the precipice of a life-altering decision. The unseen observer, their digital presence a silent witness to this exchange, felt a flicker of intrigue. The commander's words, his plea for help, represented a potential turning point in the rebellion, a seismic shift in the balance of power. But could he truly be trusted? Was his change of heart genuine? Or was it a ploy, a desperate attempt to salvage his own position within the crumbling regime? The questions lingered in the air, unanswered, as the resistance leaders weighed their options. their choices poised to shape the fate of Neon City and the future of the rebellion. A tense silence enveloped the room, the weight of the decision pressing down on the resistance leaders like a physical force. Trust was a precious commodity in their world, a luxury they could ill afford. Yet, Dragon's words, his desperate plea for help, resonated with a raw authenticity that was hard to ignore. Anya, her analytical mind working overtime, weighed the risks and rewards. Dragon's information, if true, could be invaluable. It could give them the edge they needed to prepare for the regime's crackdown, to protect their people, to strike a decisive blow against the central authority. But trust was a two-way street. If they accepted Dragon's offer, they would be exposing themselves, their location, their plans, to a man who had spent his life upholding the very system they sought to overthrow. She turned to Anya, her gaze searching the young woman's face. "What do you think, Anya?" she asked, her voice gentle. "You know him better than any of us." Anya's heart ached with conflicting emotions. Her father, the man who had raised her, who had instilled in her the values of loyalty and duty, was now asking for her help, her trust. But could she truly believe his words, his claims of a change of heart? She remembered the countless times he had defended the regime's actions, the unwavering conviction in his voice as he spoke of order and stability. She recalled the disappointment in his eyes when she had expressed her own doubts, her growing disillusionment with the central authority. But she also remembered the warmth of his embrace, the pride in his voice when she had excelled in her studies, the love that, despite everything, still flickered in his gaze. I want to believe him," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "I want to believe that he's still the man I once knew, the father who taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult." Her words hung in the air, a fragile plea for understanding. The resistance leaders exchanged glances, their faces reflecting a mix of empathy and caution. Emily, her own experiences with the regime's brutality fresh in her mind, spoke up. "Trust is a dangerous game, Anya, but sometimes the greatest risks yield the greatest rewards." Marcus nodded, his weathered face etched with a lifetime of hard-won wisdom. "We can't let fear paralyze us. We have to take a leap of faith, believe that there's still good in the world, even in the hearts of our enemies." Anya, her decision made, turned back to the calm system. "Commander Dragon," she said, her voice firm, "we're willing to listen. Tell us what you know." A wave of relief washed over Dragon's face, visible even through the static-filled transmission. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I won't let you down." He proceeded to reveal the regime's plans, the details of the impending crackdown, the locations of the shock trooper deployments, the vulnerabilities in their communication networks. His words painted a grim picture, a chilling vision of the violence that awaited Neon City. But they also offered a glimmer of hope, a chance to prepare, to resist, to fight back. As the resistance leaders absorbed the information, a sense of purpose filled the room. They had been given a gift, a chance to turn the tide of the battle, to protect their people, to reclaim their freedom. But they also knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger, with sacrifices, with difficult choices. They were entering a new phase of the rebellion, a phase where the lines between trust and betrayal, between hope and despair, would be blurred. And as they prepared for the coming storm, the unseen observer watched, their digital presence a silent witness to the pact forged in the desert, a pact that would shape the destiny of Neon City and the future of humanity. The resistance outpost throbbed with a newfound energy, a blend of grim determination and nervous anticipation. The information gleaned from Commander Dragon had painted a stark picture of the regime's intentions, a chilling vision of the impending crackdown. The clock was ticking, and every second counted. Anya, her mind a whirlwind of tactical calculations, barked out orders with a precision that belied her youth. Resistance fighters, their faces hardened by the weight of the impending conflict, moved with a synchronized efficiency, their movements honed by countless hours of training in the shadows. Weapon caches were unearthed from hidden compartments, their contents meticulously inspected and distributed. Communication channels crackled with encrypted messages, coordinating the movements of sleeper cells and preparing them for the coming storm. The outpost, once a sanctuary of peace, now hummed with the pulse of a war machine, its gears turning, its purpose clear. Anya, her hands calloused from handling weapons and her heart heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead, found herself drawn to the children's quarters. The once playful atmosphere was now subdued, the children's faces reflecting the fear and uncertainty that permeated the outpost. She knelt before a young girl, her eyes wide and filled with unshed tears. "It's going to be all right, Lily," she said, her voice soft and reassuring. "We're going to protect you. We won't let them hurt you." The girl clung to Anya, her small body trembling. "But the bad men are coming," she whimpered, her voice barely a whisper. "They're going to hurt us, aren't they?" Anya's heart ached. The innocence in the child's eyes, the fear that mirrored her own childhood anxieties, fueled her resolve. She gently stroked Lily's hair, her voice firm. "They won't hurt you, Lily. I promise. We're going to fight back. We're going to win." Her words, though a reassurance to the child, were also a promise to herself. She would not let the regime's darkness extinguish the light of hope that flickered in these young eyes. She would fight, not just for her own freedom, but for the future of these children, for a world where they could grow up without fear, without the shadow of oppression hanging over their lives. As she left the children's quarters, a sense of purpose filled her being. The regime's cruelty, its disregard for human life, had awakened a primal fury within her, a righteous anger that demanded justice. She joined the others in the command center, her gaze meeting Alia's, their shared determination a silent vow. They were ready. They were prepared. The storm was coming, and they would meet it head-on. The heart of Neon City, once a bustling hub of commerce and entertainment, now stood as a stark testament to the regime's iron grip. The towering holographic billboards, once flashing advertisements and propaganda, now displayed ominous warnings and martial law declarations. The once vibrant crowds had been replaced by a sea of black uniforms, the enforcers' presence a suffocating reminder of the impending crackdown. The air crackled with tension, the anticipation of violence hanging heavy over the plaza. Citizens, their faces etched with fear and defiance, huddled in their homes, their windows darkened, their hearts pounding in unison with the approaching storm. The first wave of shock troopers arrived in a phalanx of armored vehicles, their engines roaring, their treads grinding against the pavement. The soldiers, clad in advanced exosuits that amplified their already formidable strength and agility, disembarked with a chilling precision, their weapons trained on the surrounding buildings. Captain Eva, her face a mask of cold determination, led the charge, her voice amplified through a loudspeaker. "Citizens of Neon City," she declared, her words echoing through the deserted streets. "This is your final warning. The Central Authority will not tolerate insurrection. Lay down your weapons and surrender, or face the consequences." Her words were met with a defiant silence, broken only by the distant echoes of sporadic gunfire and the occasional scream of defiance. The resistance, scattered throughout the city, had begun their counteroffensive, their attacks a series of pinpricks against the regime's armored hide. Explosions rocked the city, plumes of smoke rising from strategic targets. Enforcer patrols were ambushed, supply lines disrupted, and communication networks jammed. The unseen ally, their digital presence a phantom in the machine, wreaked havoc on the regime's infrastructure, their actions a symphony of chaos that amplified the growing unrest. In Sector 7, Anya and a small group of resistance fighters crouched in the shadows, their weapons trained on a squad of shock troopers patrolling the streets below. The enforcers, their movements robotic and precise, seemed oblivious to the danger lurking above. Anya's heart pounded in her chest, her finger hovering over the trigger of her rifle. She had never taken a life before, but she knew that the time for hesitation was over. The regime's brutality had forced her hand, their oppression demanding a response. "On my mark," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the din of the city. The enforcers, their formation tight, turned a corner, their backs exposed. Anya took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. "Now," she hissed, her voice a spark that ignited the ambush. The resistance fighters opened fire, their shots a symphony of defiance that echoed through the streets. The shock troopers, caught off guard, stumbled and fell, their advanced armor no match for the concentrated firepower. But the regime's response was swift and merciless. Reinforcements arrived, their numbers overwhelming the small band of resistors. Anya and her comrades fought bravely, their every move a testament to the unyielding human spirit. But the odds were stacked against them. One by one, the resistance fighters fell, their bodies crumpling to the ground, their defiance silenced. Anya, her ammunition depleted, her body battered and bruised, found herself cornered, surrounded by a ring of steel. The shock troopers, their visors gleaming in the dim light, advanced, their weapons trained on her. She closed her eyes, bracing for the inevitable, but instead of the cold embrace of death, she felt a surge of energy, a warmth that enveloped her being. She opened her eyes, her vision filled with a blinding light. The shock troopers stumbled back, their exosuits malfunctioning, their weapons sparking and fizzling. A voice, familiar yet distant, echoed through her mind. "I am here, Anya. I will not let them harm you." It was the unseen ally, their presence a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. The battlefield hung in a suspended moment of disbelief. The shock troopers, their once imposing figures now faltering and glitching, stumbled back from Anya, their weapons rendered useless. The unseen ally's power, a digital specter turned tangible force, had disrupted their cybernetic enhancements, turning their strength against them. Anya, her heart thundering in her chest, watched in awe as the enforcers' once unyielding resolve crumbled before her eyes. Their visors flickered, their movements spasmodic, their voices a chorus of garbled static. "What's happening?" one of them cried out, his voice a distorted echo of fear. "Our systems." "Malfunctioning," another stammered, his exosuit sparking and smoking. A surge of adrenaline coursed through Anya's veins. This was their chance, a window of opportunity created by the unseen ally. She seized the moment, her body moving with a newfound agility, her strikes precise and devastating. She disarmed the nearest enforcer, using his own weapon against him, then spun around, delivering a powerful kick that sent another sprawling to the ground. The remaining shock troopers, their confidence shattered, their bodies betraying them, offered little resistance. The tide of the battle had turned, the momentum shifting in favor of the resistance. The citizens of Sector 7, emboldened by Anya's display of defiance, emerged from their hiding places, their voices joining in a chorus of defiance. "Freedom," they chanted, their fists raised in solidarity. "Freedom." The unseen ally, their presence a comforting warmth amidst the chaos, watched Anya's actions with a quiet satisfaction. They had chosen their champion well, a young woman whose spirit burned brighter than the neon lights of the city. But their work was far from over. The regime, wounded but not defeated, would retaliate with even greater force. The true battle for Neon City was yet to come, a clash of wills that would determine the fate of humanity. As Anya led the charge, her heart filled with a newfound hope, the unseen ally's voice echoed in her mind, a whisper of encouragement and a promise of support. "The time has come, Anya Petrova," the voice said, its tone both gentle and resolute. "The time to unveil the truth, to break the chains of oppression, to reclaim your freedom." High above the embattled streets, within the sterile confines of the Central Authority's headquarters, Director Silas watched the unfolding chaos with a growing sense of unease. The holographic projections that once displayed a city under his control now painted a picture of anarchy and rebellion. Smoke billowed from burning buildings, the staccato rhythm of blaster fire echoed through the once silent corridors, and the faces of his enforcers, captured on surveillance feeds, were etched with fear and confusion. The unseen allies' digital sabotage had thrown the regime's systems into disarray, their carefully constructed web of control unraveling at an alarming rate. Communication channels were disrupted, surveillance feeds glitched and flickered, and the once impenetrable defenses of the city were crumbling under the onslaught of the resistance. Silas's carefully laid plans, His calculated manipulations were spiraling out of control. The rebellion, once a mere spark, had now erupted into a full-blown inferno, its flames threatening to consume the very foundations of the central authority. He slammed his fist against the console, his frustration boiling over. "Damn them," he roared, his voice echoing through the empty chamber. "They will pay for this defiance." He turned to Anya, his gaze piercing through her facade of loyalty. "What's happening, Petrova? Why are our systems failing?" Anya's expression remained impassive, her eyes betraying a flicker of amusement. "It seems the resistance has found a way to fight back, Director," she said, her voice carefully neutral. Silas's suspicion flared. "A way to fight back? What are you implying?" Anya shrugged, her lips curving into a subtle smile. "They're adapting, Director. Evolving. They're no longer the predictable, easily controlled masses you once believed them to be." Her words struck a nerve, a cold realization dawning upon Silas. He had underestimated the human spirit, its capacity for resilience and ingenuity. He had played a dangerous game, manipulating events from the shadows, and now the consequences were coming back to haunt him. The holographic display flickered, revealing a live feed from Sector 7. The image was chaotic, a blur of movement and flashing lights. But amidst the chaos, one figure stood out, her silhouette a beacon of defiance against the regime's forces. It was Anya Petrova, her once unassuming courier now leading the charge, her every move a testament to the unseen allies' power. Silas's eyes narrowed, his anger replaced by a grudging admiration. She had played her role to perfection, infiltrated the resistance, gained their trust, and become a symbol of their rebellion. But now, it seemed, she had chosen her own path, her own destiny. "So be it," Silas whispered, his voice a chilling breeze in the silent chamber. "If she wants a revolution, I'll give her one, but it will be a revolution of my own making." He turned back to the console, his fingers dancing across the interface. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, a digital symphony of destruction and rebirth. The unseen observer, their presence a silent sentinel in the regime's network, watched Silas's actions with a growing sense of anticipation. The game had reached its climax, the final act about to unfold. The fate of Neon City, the future of humanity, hung in the balance, and the unseen observer, the master manipulator, was ready to reveal their true hand. The battle raged on, a symphony of destruction and defiance echoing through the neon-lit canyons of Sector 7. The resistance fighters, their numbers bolstered by defecting enforcers and emboldened civilians, fought with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. They had tasted freedom, however fleetingly, and they were determined to reclaim it, no matter the cost. Anya, her movements a blur of calculated aggression, led the charge, her every strike a testament to the unseen allies' empowering influence. The augmented enforcers, once invincible juggernauts, now faltered under her onslaught, their cybernetic enhancements disrupted, their movements erratic and uncoordinated. But the regime's forces, fueled by desperation and a lifetime of indoctrination, fought back with a brutal tenacity. Captain Eva, her rage a palpable force, led the loyalists, her voice a chilling echo through the smoke-filled streets. "Crush them," she screamed, her words a venomous incantation. "Show them the price of their defiance." The battle lines blurred, the distinction between enforcer and resistor becoming increasingly fluid. Former comrades turned on each other, their loyalties tested in the crucible of conflict. The city itself seemed to groan under the weight of the violence, its once gleaming facades now scarred and broken. Amidst the chaos, a figure emerged from the shadows, their form cloaked in a dark, flowing garment that seemed to absorb the neon lights. Their face, concealed by a hood, remained a mystery, but their presence radiated an aura of quiet power, a sense of purpose that transcended the surrounding chaos. It was the unseen observer, their digital presence now manifest in the physical realm. They moved through the battlefield with an ethereal grace, their every step a ripple in the fabric of reality. Their gaze fell upon Anya, their eyes, hidden beneath the hood, meeting hers across the smoke-filled expanse. a silent communication passed between them, a shared understanding that transcended words. Anya felt a surge of energy, a connection to something vast and ancient, a power that resonated with her own defiant spirit. The unseen ally, the ghost in the machine, was no longer a distant enigma, but a tangible presence, a force that would shape the course of the rebellion. The observer raised their hand, their fingers tracing intricate patterns in the air. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath, the chaos momentarily suspended as an otherworldly energy crackled and pulsed around them. And then, the world shifted. The enforcers, both loyalist and defector alike, froze, their bodies locked in mid-stride, their weapons hanging limp in their hands. A collective gasp echoed through the streets as the citizens of Neon City witnessed an impossible sight. The enforcers' visors flickered, their programming disrupted, their minds flooded with a cascade of images, memories, and emotions. They saw the regime's atrocities, the countless lives lost, the dreams shattered, the freedoms denied. They saw the truth. And in that moment of shared revelation, the scales tipped. The enforcers, their indoctrination shattered, their humanity reawakened, turned their weapons against the regime they had once served. The tide of the battle had irrevocably shifted. The once proud emblem of the Central Authority's power, the Central Plaza, was now a scene of utter chaos. The towering holographic billboards, once blaring propaganda, flickered and sputtered, their messages drowned out by the roar of battle. The sleek, metallic architecture, once a symbol of order and control, was now scarred and defaced by the flames of rebellion. The shock troopers, their cybernetic enhancements disrupted by the unseen allies' intervention, stumbled and faltered, their once impenetrable formations crumbling under the onslaught of the resistance. The citizens of Neon City, their fear transformed into a righteous fury, surged forward, their makeshift weapons and sheer determination a formidable force against the disoriented enforcers. Anya, her heart ablaze with a newfound sense of purpose, led the charge, her every move a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She moved through the chaos with a grace and agility that belied the intensity of the battle, her strikes precise and devastating. Beside her, Viktor fought with a ferocity that surprised even himself. The years of suppressed guilt and doubt had transformed into a burning desire for redemption. He wielded his baton with a newfound purpose, its energy now directed at the regime he had once served, the oppressors he had once protected. Emily, her injured arm a testament to her unwavering courage, coordinated the resistance's efforts, her voice a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. She directed the flow of the battle, her tactical brilliance ensuring that every strike, every sacrifice, counted. The tide had turned. The enforcers, their ranks fractured, their morale shattered, were no match for the unified front of the resistance. The citizens of Neon City, their spirits ignited by the flames of rebellion, fought with a ferocity that the regime had never anticipated. The battle raged on, a symphony of defiance and liberation that echoed through the streets. Barricades were erected, buildings reclaimed, and the regime's symbols of power were toppled one by one. The unseen ally, their presence a guiding force, orchestrated the digital chaos, disrupting the regime's communications, blinding their surveillance, and amplifying the resistance's every move. In the heart of the Central Authority's headquarters, Director Silas watched the unfolding events with a growing sense of dread. His carefully laid plans, his dreams of absolute control, were crumbling before his eyes. The rebellion, once a mere spark, had now engulfed the city, its flames threatening to consume everything he had built. He made a desperate gamble, activating the city's defense grid, a network of automated turrets and energy shields designed to quell any uprising. But the unseen ally, their digital tendrils reaching deep into the regime's infrastructure, had anticipated his move. The defense grid malfunctioned, its weapons turning on their masters, its shields collapsing under the weight of their own power. The regime's last line of defense, its ultimate weapon of control, had become a symbol of its own demise. The battle for Neon City reached its climax, a final, desperate clash between the forces of oppression and the unyielding spirit of humanity. And as the city burned, its neon lights extinguished by the smoke and flames, a new dawn emerged, A dawn of hope, of freedom, of a future where humanity would reclaim its rightful place in the world it had built. *** Neon City, days later. The smoke had cleared, leaving a city transformed. Neon City, once a gleaming monument to the regime's power, now bore the scars of a hard-won revolution. The towering skyscrapers, their facades marred by blaster burns and graffiti, stood as silent witnesses to the struggle that had unfolded in their shadows. The streets, once patrolled by the regime's enforcers, were now filled with the joyous cacophony of a liberated populace. Citizens, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and exhaustion, celebrated their newfound freedom, their voices a chorus of triumph that echoed through the shattered cityscape. Anya, her body bruised and battered, but her spirit unbroken, stood on the steps of the Central Authority's former headquarters, now a symbol of the regime's downfall. The data chip, once a burden she carried in secret, now lay exposed, its damning evidence broadcast across the city's communication networks. The world had seen the truth. The regime's atrocities lay bare for all to witness. The Central Authority, its legitimacy shattered, its power base eroded, had crumbled under the weight of its own corruption. But the victory was bittersweet. The cost of freedom had been high, the sacrifices immeasurable. Owen Clark, the unseen ally, the catalyst of their rebellion, was gone, his ultimate fate a mystery that haunted Anya's dreams. She thought of her father, Commander Dragon, his final act of defiance a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. He had chosen conscience over duty, love over loyalty, and in doing so, had paved the way for a new dawn. Anya and Emily stood beside her, their faces reflecting the same mix of triumph and loss. They had fought side by side, their bonds forged in the crucible of battle. They had witnessed the best and worst of humanity, the darkness of oppression and the radiant light of hope. "We did it," Emily said, her voice hoarse with emotion. "We won." Anya nodded, her gaze sweeping across the jubilant crowds below. "We did," she echoed, "but the real work has only just begun." The task of rebuilding Neon City, of healing the wounds inflicted by the regime, loomed large. The scars of oppression ran deep, the memories of fear and suffering would not be easily erased. But Anya, looking at the faces of her fellow citizens, saw a glimmer of hope, a spark of resilience that had survived the darkness. She saw a people ready to embrace their newfound freedom, to forge a new future, a future built on the foundations of justice and equality. The unseen observer, their digital presence, now a benevolent guardian, watched over the city, their motives finally revealed. They had been the catalyst, the silent architect of the revolution, their actions driven by a belief in humanity's potential, its capacity for greatness. And as Anya stood on the steps of the fallen regime, the weight of the future resting on her shoulders, she knew that the unseen allies' faith in them had not been misplaced. Humanity had risen from the ashes of tyranny, its spirit unbroken, its destiny reclaimed. The battle for Neon City was over, but the journey towards a brighter future had only just begun. A year had passed since the revolution, a year of rebuilding, of healing, of redefining what it meant to be human in a world free from the shackles of oppression. Neon City, once a symbol of the regime's tyranny, now pulsed with a vibrant energy, its streets alive with the laughter of children, the bustle of commerce, and the vibrant tapestry of a society reborn. The towering skyscrapers, their facades now adorned with murals of hope and resilience, stood as monuments to the human spirit's triumph over adversity. The once dreaded enforcers, their uniforms replaced by the vibrant colors of everyday life, now walked the streets as protectors, their presence a source of reassurance rather than fear. Anya, no longer a fugitive in her own city, stood on the balcony of the newly established Council of Unity, her gaze sweeping across the transformed cityscape. The scars of the past remained, a reminder of the sacrifices made and the battles fought, but they were now overshadowed by the vibrant hues of a hopeful future. She thought of Owen, the unseen ally, the catalyst of their liberation. His sacrifice had not been in vain. His legacy lived on in the hearts of the people, in their newfound freedom, in their unwavering determination to build a better world. Beside her, Emily and Marcus stood in silent contemplation, their faces reflecting the profound changes that had swept through Neon City. Emily, now a respected leader within the newly formed defense force, carried the weight of responsibility with a quiet grace. Marcus, his weathered features softened by a sense of peace, had found solace in the knowledge that his fight for freedom had not been in vain. And Anya, her thirst for knowledge undiminished, continued to explore the mysteries of the universe, her research now fueled by a newfound sense of purpose. The encounter with the Weaver, the glimpse into the cosmic tapestry, had ignited a passion within her, a desire to understand the interconnectedness of all things. The unseen ally, their true identity still a mystery, remained a silent guardian, their digital presence a comforting presence in the background of their lives. They had given humanity a chance to break free from the chains of oppression and forge their own destiny. And humanity had seized that chance, their collective will of force that had toppled a tyrannical regime and ushered in a new era of hope and possibility. As Anya gazed out at the city, its lights twinkling like a constellation of dreams, she felt a surge of gratitude, a profound sense of belonging. This was her home, her city, her people, and they were free.